iconic era and an even more iconic sound. The late 90s into the early noughties were rife with this low poly, liquid drum and bass sound, and with retro nostalgic indie games popping up all over the place, you might want to know how to craft such soundtracks too. Let's dive into it. Things start a little bit bright with this tambourine. So what I like to do is just chop it up and ensure that I have a downbeat. And then I have a repeating kind of back and forth tone until the next bar. In this particular genre, we're not going for realism, right? So with that, we apply our effects. Erosion to start things off. That does give it an already downsampled kind of feel. You can also add noise. Having the erosion before the saturator kind of excites the saturator even further. Adding redux can also give you that downsampled kind of bit crushed feel. And then I'm going to roll everything off with an EQ8 super high pass. So this is one of the most famous breaks right here. Warp this and preserve the beats with this forward transient here, bring it back to 60. That's going to shorten some of the reverbious reflections that we have here. And then I like to pitch this up 4 semitones. EQing out the kick, because we're going to add our own later, and chopping this up will give us the groove that we want. Chopping your groove up is great, but we can also create it in MIDI. And don't forget you can slice to MIDI as well, which is slightly different. I've got a groove here. And what I'm going to do is right click that, slice to new MIDI track and choose quarter notes. You'll then get something that resembles this, and from here you can slice that track up and create new drum fills and new grooves. So this is what I have in our looped bar. I like to use one shots so that I can really craft a humanistic groove. This means that I can mix the levels and the panning and EQ a little bit more closely than just chopping up something on one track, but I can also pitch individual hits. Here I have some ghost notes. And you might be able to hear that these are pitched up and down, and those transients are preserved once again. Above I have a really high snare. So combining those dry ghost notes with the reverbious snare, I get a really humanistic pattern. And I'm sure you've noticed underneath, I've got a loud downbeat hi-hat with a slightly quieter backbeat here, back and forth throughout this groove. You can set those 2 snare one shots and your hi-hat to a group and apply that same erosion, saturator, and redux trick to get that downsampled feel. But what I would suggest is also combining some of these elements. I'm going to combine my break, which is really quite low in the mix, with the tambourine and with those one shots. Moving into our melodic territory, let's start with an upright bass. This was a go-to bass sound of the 90s and works tremendously here. We can keep things generally quite simple for the most part. Occasionally, I'll add some jazzy slip notes to spice things up in the track, but I won't use it too often. I'm using Ample's upright bass. I think for this particular music type, you probably do want to go for a cheaper sound, but this is actually the only upright bass preset that I could find in my collection. So if you have something that's a go-to free option, feel free to leave it in the comments. Now I'm playing a fairly simple B minor pattern here, and it sounds like this. Coming in on the offbeat, up to the E. Very simple, lots of space. Every now and then I might slide in something a little bit more playful towards the end of a 16 or 32 bar loop. And to make it a little bit more jazzy, you want some slip notes and some large leaps here. But for the most part, you can keep this super simple. So for my pad sound, I'm basically going with a manipulated sine wave. To do that, all we need to do is draw a fundamental in Serum. You'll get this lovely sine wave pattern, and then we can kind of manipulate that by choosing this dotted line here. And you can change how that sounds by adjusting these levels here and the ones above, I've gone for like a little bit of a decay shape. So something similar to this. I've adjusted the fine tune of the first oscillator, so it's just a little bit out from the second oscillator, which is almost the same, a manipulated sine wave. The second oscillator has a unison of 2, the first oscillator just 1. So we kind of get a mono sound and then a much wider sound. Just a slight attack so your sound doesn't come in immediately. And then the second envelope is applied to the cutoff of the filter, and this filter can be set to MG low or band 12 as well. So that as your sound is played, it kind of fades in with that filter and fades out as well. There's not a ton more to this sound other than you want to add some distortion, make sure that you have like a chorus effect, maybe some delays, some filters to give it more of a psychedelic sound. Now, as you know, my music theory is not great, so I'm using Ableton's expressive chord device so that we can get some really tasty liquid drum and bass chords. To get that jazzy PlayStation sound, we want to go for a lot of minor ninths. As I've shown in another video, I've kind of modded this expressive chord device along with community member Slick P. This means that we have all of the original presets up here in the top left, and down in the bottom right we have chords that I'm adding to at the Patreon. There's 10 more chords at the Patreon just this week. I'm going to go with the B minor polygon preset, so that means we get this. I'm kind of like in 1 and 4 there. If I want to see these chords, then I can just set up a new MIDI track and select that Serum pad track here and record enable. When I play that chord out with record on, it's going to make sure that I track those chords underneath. So now with the MIDI monitor, I can actually see that I'm playing a B minor 9 and an E major 9 as well. Now you might have heard a little bit of fluttering there. I've got 3 returns set up and they're all doing a little bit of automation. The first return is just set to a reverb. I'm using Valhalla Vintage Verb, and that's just kind of thrusting off my pad into some lush space, sort of on every other bar. Then I've got a delay that I'm going to use just on the 5th bar going into kind of the 6th bar there. And then I also have a frequency echo or another delay that I'm using in the first 4 bars. Now the special thing about my B return here is that it's actually a grain delay. If you set your spray all the way up and your pitch all the way up and then your feedback somewhere under 50%, then you can get these lovely kind of like granular pitches that fly off into space, which is really lovely just for some differentiation once again. So if we combine those things, this is what we get so far. After your pads, you want to echo some of those tones more rhythmically with a keys sound. This can be done wonderfully with any kind of Rhodes-like instrument. But just quickly, a message to remind you that you can sign up to DistroKid today, getting up to 50% off if you're a student, and I've got more discounts in the description. And you'll have your music on hundreds of platforms. Their marketing tools will have your promotions looking professional and easy to follow for your audience. I keep their hyperfollow link that they generate for my newest single in the bio of my socials so everyone can pre-save my work. Easy. As I said, there's links in the description, so get some money off and let's get back to the episode. I want my next sound to be in keeping, so I'm going to use familiar chords, and as a reminder, you can resample those chords on the track above and then just crop them to the track below. So I've got a muted track here. If you're downloading this project at the Patreon, you can kind of see those chords underneath, but I'm going to keep those muted for now. Once again, I'm using Serum 2 for this preset because I wanted things to be kind of in keeping, and I have 10 new kind of PlayStation inspired sounds to download for Serum over at the Patreon, along with this project and along with 10 new chords for the modded chord extendo device. Now in Serum 2, if you're making this from scratch, again, you want to go for like a manipulated sine wave, but honestly, if you are making this from scratch, you've probably got a Rhodes-like sound in Ableton or in your DAW. In Ableton, it will be called the Electrics. There's some great presets there, and there's also some free VSTs to get you close to that kind of Rhodes sound. The main thing to note with this sound is that you just want to take that attack up a little bit so it's not too clicky. You kind of want to give it a little bit of a bit crushed down sampled feel as well. I'm doing that more so with the distortion here. can set it to down sample and then just up your mix and your drive there. And I'm also helping myself out with the envelope follower. That envelope follower is tied to the frequency of the auto filter. Set the envelope follower, taking it off mod and to remote 16% and 94%. So it's going to start here and then work its way up to 94%, which will be about here. And that gives it that cool like wub effect. You want to mess around with your rise and fall times so that it's not too quick, not too slow. I've made sure to roll off the lows and apply a little bit of width with a line delay. So this should work really nicely with your serum pad. Because of the attack time of your serum pad, they sort of complement each other in like call and response. You get your downbeat and then your offbeat off the pads. Coming to the final touches now, and I want to add some strings. You can use any cheap string sound. I'm going to use the AC Strings orchestral preset inside Ableton. Roll off those lows. Occasionally, I'm ramping up the tremolo of this sound just so we get a little bit of wobble. What am I playing for the chords? Well, I just chopped up what was found in the serum pad. I chopped it up into 4 areas and then just kind of changed the voice in. So this note maybe went up here, maybe this note went down, and this note up here. It's really low in the mix. If I assign my other instruments, I get this. So finally, we want an acid 303 sound. I'm really excited about this little preset here. So we're starting with the sound in Serum, and we're using this lovely acid ladder preset. S2 filters, acid ladder right here. It's got a big notch on it so it can go through the frequency spectrum. In envelope 1, you're gonna keep that sound really, really short. Envelope 2, we're doing something interesting where if we right click, you can see that this is assigned to the filter frequency and main tuning. And this is really, really short, right? If I turned that attack up, you can hear that the pitch goes right up, but by keeping it short and that decay, that hold, that sustain pretty much all the way down, it means that it has a really quick pitch inflection towards the bottom. And then we're also doing the same with the filter frequency. So you can see that envelope 2 is assigned here, and anytime we hear that note, it very quickly pitches all the way down. So it kind of creates a very quick pluck effect. But that filter is also assigned to LFO2, which is sweeping all the way up and then all the way over. So over time, we start to filter up and filter sweep down as well, which gives the synth some movement. We've also got effects applied here, mostly distortion, some chorus as well, and then a little bit of delay and reverb to just give it some movement. So the cool thing about this is that I've used the arpeggiator with those chords that we saw before from the Lush Serum pads, and I'm automating the rate. So what I wanna do is go between 16th note automations, 8th notes, and 12ths. And that's gonna give us this kind of sound. But you can also note that the steps are automated and the gate. And the gate and the steps are pretty much automated together. Whenever the step count goes up, the gate also goes up as well. And that extends those notes so they don't become as chopped as we saw in the first envelope. They become a little bit more legato and bleed into one another. Little bit of that cool delay pitch that we heard there. It works best at the end of the line here. Super cool, right? I feel like this is a little bit much with the entire loop. So just to give it a little bit more movement, I add the EQ8 and apply an LFO. So it just exaggerates that filtering. This is set to a rate of 4 as well. But even then, it's sometimes a little bit much. So what I would do is, if you're copying this tutorial, is maybe have this automate on and off. So there we have it, guys. Liquid drum and bass in a low poly retro nostalgic coat. Are you going to dip your toe into making this genre? Have you made this kind of music before? And what would you want to see in future episodes? Don't forget that you can grab everything seen in today's video over at the Patreon. That includes the project, the HC chord extender, and the Serum presets too, as well as 300 other things that I've already posted at the Patreon. Thank you so much for swinging by, and I'll catch you next time.